Okay, the next sample I am going to do is square number 2 for the clean finish seam. I am going to use my second 4x4 square that I have cut out for this sample. So I'm going to set up my machine, make sure all my settings are correct. I'm going to make sure that my tension is at 5, that I am at stitch 1 and 2 for green side. My stitch width is at 0, and my needle position is in the center. I'm also going to make sure that my stitch length is at 2.5. Always check your settings before you start to make sure that someone before you did not change them. So the first direction says to baste 1/4 inch seam along a single edge of fabric. Pick one side. So this is a single edge of fabric. I'm just going to pick this side. You could have picked any side. When I am basting, I need to set my settings to baste, which means turning the stitch length until it is at 5. 5 is for basting. Something else that I am not going to do is I am not going to backstitch. When you baste, you should not be backstitching. That's the only time you do not backstitch. So I am going to place my fabric at the 1/4 inch mark, which is the side of the presser foot. And I'm going to baste, which means no backstitch. I'm going to make sure my take-up lever is in the up position before removing it. Lift, and go ahead and cut the thread. Okay. My next direction says to press to wrong side of fabric along the stitching line. So your wrong side should be kissing. So what that means is, since I have a wrong side and I have a right side, I am going to press it to the wrong side on that stitching line. And then I'm going to go to the ironing board and I am going to press this. Again, my wrong sides are kissing at this point. Okay, I've just come back from the ironing board and I have pressed the edge to the wrong side. So I'm going to go ahead and cross off on my directions that I have pressed to the wrong side. The next direction says stitch in the middle of the fold. What that means is I am going to stitch right here in the center. This is a fold. I'm going to stitch right in the center of that. I need to make sure that I change my settings off of baste back to stitching. So I'm going to turn my stitch length to 2.5. And since the direction asked me to stitch, I am going to back stitch this time. I am stitching in the center of that fold. Make sure your take-up lever is in the up position. Trim my threads. I backstitched at both ends since the directions did ask me to stitch, and it is in the center, the stitching line. I'm going to go ahead and cross off that direction since I did that. The next direction asks to fold the fabric again with the frayed edge in the fold. So what that looks like is I'm going to take my sample, and here's the folded edge, and there's the frayed edge. The frayed edge is going to be in the fold, so I'm going to fold that down one more time. The direction then asks to go sew as close as you can to the baste line, but you're going to do a permanent stitch. So this was our baseline before, where it has the large stitches. Now that baseline is down here, so I am going to sew as close as I can to this bottom edge. And since I am sewing, my stitch length is at 2.5, and I'm going to backstitch. Again, I am sewing as close as I can to that bottom basted edge. Make sure my take-up lever is up. And then I am going to go press my seam. This is how, this is how the seam should look on the front. A nice straight line with back stitching here and here at the bottom. That is how it should look on the front side. After you are done pressing it, you are then going to go staple it below your first sample, and then you can move on to the next sample.